Hey everyone, my name is Catherine and welcome to my channel. And today I wanted to talk about some of my biggest travel mistakes that I have done throughout my different years of traveling. We are all bound to get into some kind of situation while traveling, whether it's something that has to do with packing or something that has to do with other people abroad or whatever it may be. And looking back on my different travel experiences off the top of my head, because I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, I thought of a few that I wanted to include, and even just including these few could possibly be a good learning lesson. I definitely learned from it, and maybe you listening will be like, that's obvious, why did you do that? And you know what? Things happen. Sometimes you let your guard down. If anything, just find entertainment out of previous Catherine's pain. So let's get into it. I lived in Australia for a few months after I graduated from undergrad, but before starting grad school. It was a classic, like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I've applied to so many jobs and no one wants me, and I don't even know if I want those jobs. I'm having a quarter life crisis. I'm gonna go to Australia. So that's what I did. Although, to be fair, I have always wanted to try living in a different country for some time. I've never been somebody that wants to like move away permanently, but just like a few months to a year, maybe two max, but that's pushing it. And so that's what I did. I went to Australia for a few months. I did an international internship, and semester at sea really helped me get out of my shell and know that if I want to do something, I can do it, and I can do it alone because I didn't know anyone going into it. So it gave me the confidence to do Australia. The difference with Australia and semester at sea is that with semester at sea, it's a school program. So I went on a ship with hundreds of other people in my same age group, in the same part of life as me, in school, in undergraduate college or whatever, and all of that. With Australia, I for some reason thought there'd be like a cohort of people, but in reality it was just me, and I was roomed with somebody who went to a college nearby, but she was very shy. I was really shy, so we didn't really befriend each other. We were just neutral. And the company that I interned for was tiny. It was me and two older men that were old enough to be my father, and my mom was like worried that I was gonna I was in danger. I never felt like I was in danger, but I can understand like her daughter is like working with these two older men in Australia alone. But it was definitely like the loneliest time in my life, to be honest. I did fall in love with Melbourne, Australia. That's where I was so much with the city, and I'm good by myself. But no matter how good you are by yourself, if you move alone to a foreign country on the other side of the world, it's gonna be hard. And I remember the first few days that I was there, I was so anxious. I think I had a panic attack. I'm still not 100% sure if it was or was not. Probably was, but I just basically freaked out and was like telling my parents on the phone, like, I'm coming home. I can't do this. I can't do this. And the travel mistake that I want to say with this is that if you go somewhere, whether it's a trip or you're moving or it's a temporary, longer thing, like what I was doing, do not let first impressions and the first few days or even the first few weeks determine like your entire mood about your trip and what you're doing. And don't go home at the very beginning. I did not end up going home. I stayed the whole time, and I ended up falling in love with Australia and having some really good experiences there. And although I didn't like make a bunch of friends or anything, I did make some kind of like loose friends, I guess. Like I went to a church every weekend, and I was able to like join some church groups and kind of make some loose friends where like I'd only meet them during church and things like that. But I loved it, and I'm so glad I didn't leave. So that is my next just thing, is give it some time and do not let that initial thought or fears determine you not completing or not continuing to pursue whatever travel experience you're a part of. But continuing on, just some quick flight related mistakes, because I feel like that's gonna happen to everyone. One is that I almost missed my flight in London. This was actually my first international trip without my parents. I went on a tour with EF Ultimate Break back in 2015. They are a tour company that is made for young adults who are between 18 and 35. I had an incredible time on my first EF trip, and every EF trip, to be honest. But my EF trip ended in London, and so I was flying from London to the US. And because it was one of my first international flights alone, I was with a friend, but alone as in without adult supervision, although I was technically an adult at that point, but I was like 20, 21. So, and it was my first international trip without parents or whatever, except for the one going to Europe originally on that tour. But I remember underestimating how big Heathrow Airport truly is. So when you get to an airport, just understand how much time you need to get from point A to point B, and that you give yourself enough time, because I just assumed like the airport in the Seattle area, it's big, but it's not going to take, you know, it's not as big as Heathrow, and it's not going to take as much time to get from security to whatever gate you're going to. With Heathrow, it honestly sometimes will take from security to your gate like 15 plus minutes, because it's just so massive. And I remember, I'm a big shopper, I'm not gonna lie, and I love the brand Ted Baker. There's been more Ted Bakers that have opened up in the US and around me since 2015, but at that point there wasn't. And so I was really excited that there's a Ted Baker right by security. And I remember just like going through shops, and especially I remember Ted Baker. And then I realized, me and my friend, like, oh no, our flight is boarding and we need to get to it. And so we start going, and then I realize it says like 15 minutes until D gates or whatever it is. And then that's when me and her start running. And if you know, running with a backpack on, it is not fun at all. And it got to the point where I could hear like my name over the intercom, like, Catherine, if you do not get on your flight soon, we will leave without you, kind of a thing. And I was just like, I cannot be left behind. This is my first international trip. My parents are never gonna let me go again if I miss my flight from London. Thankfully I made it on, but it was very tight. So do not underestimate how long it'll take you to get from point A to point B, and get too distracted with shopping at airports. It's just like the stupidest reason why, because EF is very careful. They provide transportation to and from the airport, and they will make sure there's plenty of time. But that was just fully me and my friend once we were in the airport, just getting distracted. The next one is also an airport related one, and that is I showed up to the wrong airport in Berlin, Germany. I don't know how that happened. Sometimes I'm great with travel, and sometimes I make the stupidest choices, and the people that are working at airports or whatever maybe just look at me with the stupidest, like, they're like, what is wrong with you? I think I was also finishing up a Kentucky trip. That's what I was doing. It was a Scandinavia and Russia Kentucky trip, but it ended in Berlin, or you had the choice to end where you wanted it to end. Me and my friend, we went to Germany. At that point, the trip ended. They're not responsible for transportation to the airport because we bought our own flights. And I somehow made the mistake and showed up to the wrong airport. So normally this would mean I missed my flight, because airports aren't like super close to one another, and yeah. But somehow, for some reason, I had plenty of time. Like, I decided to show up really, really early. And then when I realized it was the wrong airport, it was just dealing with this shock, the embarrassment from what the employees were giving me, like their looks. And then once like that was over, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to the next airport, and I still had plenty of time. So thankfully I did not miss my flight. But that is my other big airplane mistake that I can remember. That was my fault, because I've had plenty of airport stories that is not my fault at all, but those ones definitely were. Okay, I just realized actually I made another airport mistake, and that is when I went to travel to Boston with my friend, who I actually met on semester at sea. And my flight home, it was like the day before my flight, and I was just, I don't know, doing my thing around Boston, and my dad called me to tell me like, hey, this is when your flight is, blah blah blah. And I was like, wait a minute, it's I don't remember if it was, I thought my flight was in the PM, but it was really AM, or the other way around. But basically, let's just say I thought my flight was 8 PM, but in reality it was 8 AM. So I would have completely gotten the times wrong if my dad did not remind me of my flight situation. I like to think I've had growth since then, and that I don't make those mistakes. They're bound to happen. My parents have missed flights before, and it was their fault, so it happens. But that was definitely another travel mistake that I have made. And another one, I always have a hard time with overpacking. I don't know, I like my stuff. I have a very thorough skincare routine, and I just seem to always overpack. And it's a thing, like, no matter how much I travel, it's always, packing is so stressful. Like this past summer, I did my first international trip to Costa Rica, Ecuador, and the Galapagos since the pandemic began, since 2019 actually. And I was so stressed out about packing because, especially, I'd never been to that part of the world really, or at least South America. I'd been to Central America, and it was hot but rainy and bugs, and I was so stressed, and I still overpacked. I could have done worse, but I could have done better. But that's definitely another travel mistake I make all the time. Even though I sometimes have made packing videos about it, I have to kind of remind myself, and it definitely is harder when I haven't traveled in a while. But that is definitely my most common travel mistake that I make a lot. But those are the top travel mistakes I can think of off the top of my head. Let me know maybe some of your travel mistakes and what you've learned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day or night whenever you're seeing this, and I hope to see you in a future video of mine. Bye!